Wanna know why gas prices are so high? Cause I fuck shit up.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about why gas prices are so high here in America. And the reason why gas prices are high here in America isn't because of a Putin price hike or anything to do with anything in Ukraine. It has to do with the fact that we elected a beta male in the White House in 2020. Now, your Joe Biden is a textbook beta male, like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And when you put a beta male in a leadership position, they oftentimes wind up messing everything up. Now, the big problem with your beta male is that he acts and is socialized just like a female, and oftentimes he does not critically think about the big picture. And because he feels and reacts on emotion instead of thinking critically about any decision that he makes, what he does is make decisions in the short term that do damage to himself and people in the long term. And this is why you don't want to put a beta male in a leadership position, because oftentimes these guys go out here and react on emotion and don't see how their decisions impact things in the far future. Now, the reason why your gas prices are so high here in America is because your Joe Biden was in his feelings about Donald Trump, and because he was in his feelings about Donald Trump, he decided to go out here and make an emotional decision to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline and stop drilling on American land. Now, your President Trump, while I don't like him, he did go out of his way to ensure that America had energy independence, and for his term of being president, we had our own oil, and we were not depending on the Saudis. We were not depending on the Russians. We were not depending on anyone for oil. We were making our own oil, and this was the reason why gas prices were so low. But because your Joe Biden didn't like the fact that Donald Trump had gone out here and lowered gas prices, he decided to reverse all of Donald Trump's policies because of his feelings regarding Donald Trump, and in an effort to go out here and spite him. And in that effort to go out here and spite your Donald Trump, he didn't see the long-term damage he was going to do to the U.S. economy. No, it was all about sating the feelings of all of those leftists who were angry that Donald Trump had beaten Hillary Clinton in 2016 and reversing the policies of a man that they just did not like, all about making themselves feel good about going out here and getting even with a guy that they didn't like. Unfortunately, they weren't thinking critically about the consequences of their actions, and because they weren't thinking about the consequences of their actions, they went out here and didn't see how your Donald Trump's energy policy was actually benefiting America's economy. And because they couldn't see how his energy policy was benefiting the economy, they just sat there and got caught up in how they felt about things, not understanding that gas prices were lower as a result of that policy. Now, your Joe Biden, over the last year or so, as his approval rating has dropped, he wanted to go out here and continue to spite Donald Trump. And while he was trying to spite him, gas prices continued to go up. Now, your gas prices continued to go up because we no longer had a supply of oil anymore. And because we didn't have that supply of oil anymore, and we had more demand because after the pandemic, more people were going to work across the country, prices were going to shoot up. So this is basic supply and demand, and we don't have those supplies of oil anymore thanks to your Joe Biden and his energy policy. And now you have prices going up, and those prices were further increased when your Joe Biden, when his insecurities about his failures as related to Afghanistan and the economy's supply chain issues, he decided to go out here and, in an effort to try to build up his approval rating for the short term, decided to go out here and start a conflict in Russia with the Ukraine. Now, this Ukraine conflict was something that really was escalated by your Joe Biden, and he went out here and put gasoline on the fire between Russia and Ukraine. And as a result of that, it led to this conflict, which further increased gas prices. And then as those gas prices went up due to inflation, because another supply chain had been cut off due to Biden's escalation, then we started to see gas prices further increase. And after going out here and starting that conflict in Ukraine to overcompensate for his failures and deflect from his failures, your Joe Biden then went out here and got emotional again, and at the prodding of the many people in his White House, decided to cut off oil supplies from Russia. Now, Russia provides only 7% of U.S. oil to the U.S., but your Joe Biden wants to make it look like it's something that has to do with Putin, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Putin. It has to do with his policies that he put in place, policies put in place based on feelings, not based on critical thinking or logic and reason. And these approaches are the same that the beta male uses, because the beta male, when he's in a leadership position, everything is about his emotions and not about thinking about a bigger picture. Now, in the aftermath of going out here and canceling the Keystone Pipeline, canceling drilling on American land, and then escalating this whole situation in Ukraine, your Joe Biden now realizes how badly he's fucked up, and now he's going hat in hand to all of these different countries. Now, back when he cut off the Keystone Pipeline, he first then tried to beg for oil from OPEC, but OPEC wasn't hearing him. Now, in the aftermath of the Ukraine conflict, what he's doing now is trying to go and beg the Saudis, and now he's trying to go to Venezuela. And him approaching these countries basically is him coming from a position of weakness, and that's where these countries are, that's why they're blowing him off. And they're blowing him off because they see him coming from a position of weakness. Moreover, they can see things from a panoramic perspective, and they can see where he escalated all of these conflicts and all of these problems himself. And because they can see where he went out here and escalated everything, they see the leverage that they have in this situation, and they know that when he comes to them, he's coming to them on their terms, not his terms. And that is where the beta male always makes his mistake. After he fucks everything up, he then wants to go with his hat in hand, trying to go beg people for help and thinking that he has some sort of position of power. But when you have to go to another man for help, you are coming from a position of weakness. And when you come from a position of weakness, people do not really see you as strong. And because they don't see you as strong, they don't respect you in any way, shape, or form. And this is something that flies over the heads of many beta males like your Joe Biden, They still sit there thinking that they're coming from a position of power because they're getting off on their emotions. And because they're getting off on their emotions about showing the other guy, what they do is they don't see how this is going to come back and bite them in the ass. And it's going to come back and bite them in the ass because they're sitting there thinking, oh, I've got all of this power. I'm showing out this other guy, but you're not showing anybody anything except that you're weak. And people can see your weakness, and they saw Joe Biden's weakness on January 20th, 2021, when he signed that executive order for canceling the Keystone Pipeline. Now, the international community saw that really bad chess move, and that's why you saw all of these other countries looking to take advantage. And they took advantage because they saw the bigger picture, and even I saw the bigger picture when I heard him sign that executive order, because I knew that there was going to be a long-term consequence for that impulsive decision, and that long-term consequence would be higher gas prices, because if you're not producing your own supply of gas, you're going to have to go overseas to go get that supply. And when you have to go overseas to get a supply after having your own and it's no longer there, demand is going to go up and prices are going to go up exponentially. Unfortunately, this whole pattern of logic flies over the head of your Joe Biden because he's in his feelings about Donald Trump. And it's those feelings about Donald Trump that have plagued the Biden presidency and led to him making a whole host of emotional decisions that have done damage to America and America's economy. And like the beta male, your Joe Biden, instead of him admitting that he has messed up and taking responsibility, what he does is he denies that he's done anything wrong. And what he's doing now is, because he's failed and he knows he's failed, what he wants to do is a classic beta male move, and that is try to gaslight people into believing that paying higher prices is a good thing. The part of this two-pronged attack is to say, oh, this is a Putin price hike, but prices were going up when your Joe Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline. So prices have gone up exponentially over the last year, but he wants us to believe that the real reason why the prices went up has to do with a war that started just a week ago. That is classic beta male gaslighting. And the whole thing is that when you see a beta male trying to gaslight you, it's done so poorly, you can easily call it out for what it is. Because the beta male, the reason why he's trying to gaslight you is because he's really desperate. And because he's so desperate, he'll try to manufacture a lie to get you to believe that he's not the one responsible for anything, but he's the one who is responsible for everything. And he's responsible for everything because everything that he does is based on feelings, not on facts, not on logic, not on reason or critical thinking. And that is why it is a bad thing to go out here and put a beta male in a leadership position. Because when you put a beta male in a leadership position, he approaches everything from a position of insecurity. And because he's coming from his feelings of insecurity, he approaches everything from a position of weakness. And when he approaches everything from that position of weakness, what that does is it makes it where people see his weakness in his facial expressions, in his body language, and they see his weakness in his actions. And when they see his weakness in his actions, they see it as a way to gain an advantage. And that's why you see countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela looking at Joe Biden as weak and knowing that they have an advantage. And that's why they look at him and say, look, this guy is somebody we can gain an advantage of. But the reason why he gained an advantage is because he went out here and played a game trying to tell people what they want to hear, which is another classic beta male trait. A beta male, he'll go out here and tell you what you want to hear to get into a position of power. Unfortunately, when he gets in a position of power, he does not know how to take responsibility, and because he doesn't know how to take responsibility, he winds up leading any place that he's in straight into a ditch. And once he leads it straight into a ditch and winds up failing, he then goes into his whole host of efforts to make people codependent on him, and that is by going out here and blaming you for his failures and telling you it's your fault why he failed. But the whole reason why he failed is because he's really not a good leader. He's not very visionary. He's not very creative. And he's a whole lot of hot air. He can talk a good game, but he cannot go out here and solve the problem. Now, the problems, most of them were created by your Joe Biden when he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, and he doesn't want to own that mistake, because owning that mistake would mean that he would pretty much prove to everyone he's incompetent and show everybody he is not fit for office. But your Joe Biden was never fit for office, and even your own Barack Obama said at one point, don't question how Joe Biden can F stuff up, and he's basically effed stuff up at this point as related to the U.S. economy, because not only is this whole mess and as related to these gas price hikes going to affect the economy, his emotional decision to cut off Russia's oil supplies to America are going to actually impact the dollar, because now that the Russians no longer have to use our credit system, they can go out here and invest in other forms of currency, and that's going to weaken the dollar overall. So basically what your Joe Biden has done over the last year has set a course for setting America into a recession and possibly set it on a course for depression. So this is even bigger than your gas prices, and gas prices are just the tip of the iceberg as related to how badly Joe Biden has messed things up. He has basically damaged the U.S. economy long term because he's not thinking critically, and because many on the left are still butthurt about Donald Trump beating them and so bruised as related to their ego. They're not really thinking critically about the bigger picture as related to the damage that they're doing. They don't really understand that because they were in their feelings during the pandemic and put all of this money into the economy, they started the inflation as related to partially why these prices here in America are so high. Because they wanted to go out here and get back at Donald Trump to sabotage his presidency, they locked down everything, then poured all this money into the economy, and that's now pouring all that money into the economy created the inflation. And then when you had the people coming back to work and they were looking to go out here and drive, that also drove up the prices because the supply of gas had been cut due to the ending of the Keystone pipeline and cutting off all of America's drilling. So we wound up in a situation because of Joe Biden's failed leadership, but he wants to deflect and make you believe that it has to do something with Putin and Ukraine. But it has nothing to do with Putin and Ukraine. It all has to do with Joe Biden's incompetence, and most Americans are seeing how incompetent the Biden presidency is, and that's one of the reasons why many people are thinking about the red tidal wave. Now, many of these leftists, they're sitting there thinking that they are so smart, and that's the other big problem with your beta male nerds. They oftentimes think that they're so smart that they can go out here and do things like gaslight you, like he's doing with the Putin price hike, and they think they can gaslight you by going out here and telling you that prices are high because of some other reason than themselves. But oftentimes, when you pull the beta male out of the power position and put a competent man in the position, you see that all of the problems go away. So that shows everybody that the problem was not the situation like this guy was explaining. It's basically we pull the beta male out of the position of power and put a competent person in power. It's sort of like the difference between New York City and Florida. Your Ron DeSantis has been running Florida ever since everything came out of lockdown, and the economy is running well. Meanwhile, here in New York, your Bill de Blasio practically has stalled the economy with his jab mandates, and your Eric Adams continues to further stall the economy with his jab mandates, showing us that it's not the pandemic that was the problem, it was the beta male in leadership. And America's problem here with Joe Biden, your Bill de Blasio, your Eric Adams, and many on the left, is we've got a bunch of beta males trying to go out here and they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And that's classic beta male leadership. Keep doing what doesn't work, and that's what we call in the textbook the definition of insanity, doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. And the reason why they keep doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result is because your beta male is too proud to admit when he is wrong. Just like a female, what they do is they go out here and they make a decision on emotion that they think is going to hurt another person, but it winds up being detrimental to themselves. And when they realize it's detrimental to themselves, they start to get in their feelings of desperation, and then they start scrambling, looking for a solution. And then as they're scrambling, looking for a solution, they run over back to the man that they dumped, or they run into the hands of an enemy. And that's what's happening with Joe Biden right now. He, in his feelings of spite, wanted to hurt Donald Trump, but he didn't understand he was hurting the country, and now he's desperate, running around over to America's enemies like Iran, like Venezuela, and going over to countries that he threw a middle finger up at, like the Saudis and the UAE, desperately looking for some oil, like a fiend looking for crack. But that desperation really shows all of those people that he's not somebody they need to respect or somebody they need to regard. But that's par for the course with your beta male when you put him in a leadership position, because as a follower, all he's looking for is social acceptance. And because he's looking for social acceptance, he doesn't really understand how his actions impact others. He's all about trying to push his ideals as related to his feelings, not thinking about how things work in other situations. He can't see a bigger picture because everything is about his tunnel vision. And because he's in his tunnel vision, all he's thinking about is getting back at the other guy, whether it be Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin. He can't think about a bigger picture as related to people. And because he can't think about a bigger picture as related to people, he can't see the suffering of others who are going to be impacted by his decisions. And that's why you don't put beta males in leadership positions, because when you put a beta male in a leadership position, a beta male will make bad business decisions because he's focused on the short term. And because he's focused on the short term, he doesn't really understand that you have to think about a bigger picture and the long term. And because he's caught up in them feelings about whoever he's got a grudge with, he goes out here and burns bridges when he needs to be building them, and he winds up wrecking things and making them worse than anything. The only hope for America is in November, and I'm hoping many Americans don't fall for the hype as related to this propaganda, because the only way out of this is to check a Joker Joe, and the only way to do that is with a red tidal wave And the whole thing is Joker Joe knows that this is coming, and that's why he's scrambling, looking for a way out. But the whole thing is there is no way out of this, because everything started because he ran his whole campaign on feelings and spite. And when a beta male goes out here and runs things on feelings and spite, what happens is that he subconsciously has all of this anger, and that anger turns into contempt for people. And that's, again, another reason why you don't put a beta male in a leadership position, because a beta male has contempt for the people he's supposed to serve. And passively, he'll go out here and be the leader, but aggressively, he does things to undermine and sabotage people, because he's still butthurt about being rejected. And because he's butthurt about being rejected, what he goes out here and does is looks to destroy the lives of people, because he's in his feelings about being picked second. And this is something that beta males do when they finally get the girl of their dreams. They make her life a nightmare, because subconsciously he's so angry about being picked second that he wants to go out here and hurt this woman. And that's what we're seeing right now from Joe Biden and the left. They're still angry and butthurt about 2016, and they want to make Americans suffer for 2016. And that's something that Americans really need to take a critical look at, because, again, this is why your beta male, should not be in leadership positions, because he holds grudges, he gets in his feelings, and when you put him in leadership positions, he'll sit there and tell you that suffering is okay, and he wants you to suffer because he wants to get revenge for whatever wrong he thinks you did to them, and he wants to get even with you. And him sitting there telling you that you have to pay higher gas prices is okay is part of his anger about 2016 and the left's anger at 2016. And just like a female, they're willing to take a whole lot of mess as related to things being wrong in order to get back at a guy who they believe hurt them. And this is the codependent thing that the beta males and the left want to do. They want to hurt the American people because they still feel butthurt about losing in 2016. Unfortunately, they may have gone out here and set a course where America may wind up losing the entire state of the Union. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want me to make a video and I know something about the subject, you can donate to my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box, or you can drop a PayPal donation. And if you want to see me, if you want me to make more positive black fiction, Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets from the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today.